Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of Manifesting Muslimah. I'm your host, Zara Pedersen, and today I am, to the very best of my ability, going to try and answer a question that I seem to be getting a lot, like a concern about whether or not you're praying for the right thing, if you've set yourself the right goal. I get messages like this a few times a week where people are like, I don't know if I should continue making this dua. Maybe it's not the right thing for me. How do I know if I'm praying for the right thing? How do I know if this is what is meant for me? What if Allah doesn't want to give me this thing because it's not actually written for me, but I'm being too stubborn and I'm not letting it go? So on and so forth. I get these messages all the time and I understand these messages. They're very understandable because none of us want to waste our time if we can avoid it. And if somebody can be like, yeah, no, that is absolutely a waste of your time, stop it, right? So I can understand why people want to ask these questions of me. But of course, first of all, who am I to say yes or no to that? Because I am not Allah, astaghfirullah. I am not one to tell you what to do with your life or how you should live it, or what decisions you should or shouldn't make, or what du'as you should or shouldn't make. However, I would like to instill a little bit of the understanding and the knowledge based upon my reading and understanding of the Quran that has helped me understand this to a level where I no longer worry whether or not I'm praying for the right thing or the wrong thing. And I'm hoping it can do the same for you. Now, this can get a little bit murky at times. I'm going to try again to the very best of my ability to make it as clear as possible. But it is one of those topics that can be a little bit difficult sort of for me as somebody who, well, I speak really, really good English, but it's still not my first language. And sometimes I can get kind of, stuck in between words and stuff. So to the very best of my ability, I'm going to try and answer this question for you. Okay, so let's get started. No more rambling. So the first thing I'm going to say to you is we do not have the gift of foresight. None of us do. Allah has the gift of foresight. He is the knower of everything from past, present, future. And he also understands that time is not linear the way that we don't understand. Like, we have an idea, we've got an inkling, we understand it in theory, but we can't see that time is not linear. But through studies and science and everything, we kind of understand the theory sometimes, not all the time, because when we think too much about it, it kind of hurts our heads a little bit. And, the majority of us are not quantum physicists. So how would we know? And how would we be able to wrap our minds around it? It's a very advanced theory. But if you sort of understand the theory, or like you have a good idea of what the theory is and you've kind of accepted that to be, then you'll understand that time is not linear. And so for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, time is not a thing, but so he sees everything, has already seen it happen. He can flip it, reverse it, turn it upside down. Time is another thing for him. It is for us. So of course, Allah will know if something is for us because he's already seen every decision we could possibly make played out. And that includes the decisions that we don't even know we're going to make, the decisions that we think we're going to make, the decisions that we thought we weren't going to make but are going to make anyway, all of those things, okay? That's the quantum physics aspects to it. And also, I do want to say here, because I did make a very, very rough statement, and I'm going to stick by it. I said none of us have the gift of foresight. So even the people who claim to have the gift of foresight don't actually have the gift of foresight. They're talking to, well, we don't really necessarily know who they're talking to, but my best guess is that they're talking to jinns. And we don't know if those jinns, like the intention of those jinns, if they're good or bad, or if they're trying to trick us, or they're actually trying to help us. And you can get both types of jinns. And so as a result, those people who say, well, I know what's going to happen, I would advise you not to listen to them, because you don't know the intention of the entity that they would be speaking to get this kind of information. So that was just kind of like a little, if you're like, no, my friend has the gift of foresight. No, she doesn't. She's talking to something she shouldn't be talking to. That is just my opinion. And actually, you know what? Right now, I have just decided that I'm going to make a whole episode here on the podcast about that kind of stuff, just because I think it's interesting, and maybe you'll think it's interesting as well. Okay, anyway, that was just a little sidetrack. So the point is, we don't have the gift of foresight, but what we do have is the gift that is free will. We have the gift of logic, most of us, not everybody. We have the gift of remembering, memory, past experiences. We have the gift of evaluation, and that is based on information that we may have been given in the past or can get while we're going towards the thing or whatever. And all of these things combined means that we can assess to the best of our ability with the tools that we have in this dunya to assess whether or not something might be a good idea or something might be a bad idea. Okay, so that's what all of us do when we're trying to make decisions in this dunya. Now, when it's something that we want and we're trying to manifest something, and we're like, I really want to manifest this. And so we're sitting down and we're going to make dua on it. And so we're making the dua and time passes and we're like, I actually don't even know if this is good for me, because what if Allah doesn't want me to have this thing? Should I be making this dua? What if I'm wasting my time? What if I'm praying for the wrong thing? I shouldn't be focused on the money. I should be focusing on happiness and lifestyle quality within my family or job-wise or whatever, but it's not the money. The point is that you'll never know this. You can only ever work with your intention. So always check back with your intention. If your intention is good, you're probably kind of going in the right direction anyway. But if your intention is bad, maybe you should stop and think about it and redirect if you can, so that your intention is actually good. That is the best that we have. Now, in trying to understand, because this is where it can get a little bit muddled sometimes for people to understand, is regardless of whether or not the thing that you're calling in and asking Allah to give to you as a bless your life with, regardless of whether or not that thing is meant to be there forever and make you happy and more fulfilled, or that thing is meant to come in as a lesson, it still doesn't make it a wrong dua. Okay, let me try and explain. So let's say you're praying to marry this person, and this person then comes and marries you. Now, you don't know if this is the right marriage for you. You can only go by what you know, how the person has presented themselves to you, and whether or not you want to be with them. But Allah might be like, but he's not your person. He's not your person, but I'm going to facilitate, i.e. I'm going to allow this to happen. Okay, nothing happens without Allah's will. So you can pray for it and then it happens. Allah answers that dua. But in Allah's world, this, he already knows is not going to last. This is not the marriage for you. So he will, facilitate lessons within that marriage for you and for that person as well. So that you will learn that, hey, we were judging this marriage based on something that wasn't relevant, or that we weren't being completely honest or transparent with ourselves, or we didn't know ourselves enough, or I didn't know you enough, or whatever it might be. And so this marriage will end up in failure, or like in a divorce, or however it might end up, right? So now, you prayed for this and you got married. You actually got the blessing, or Allah facilitated the thing that you were asking for, but it didn't last. Does that mean that that was a wrong dua? Absolutely not. Because here's why. Allah is the facilitator. Nothing happens outside Allah's will, meaning he willed for you to get into that situation. So it was never a wrong dua. He actually wanted you to have that experience. Because in that experience, there were lessons for you to learn. There was growth to be had, and there were things to be known from that experience that you wouldn't have gone in other places if, for instance, you hadn't chosen to get married there. Okay. And as a result of that, you, being a smart, logical, grown-up woman, go on the other side of that experience, having packed your backpack full of all that information and knowledge and lessons, so that you can go into another relationship in the future, inshallah, and bring that with you and become a stronger wife, person, partner in a relationship, inshallah. Okay, do you see what I mean? So even the point where when you're praying for something and Allah sees that, hey, I actually have something better in store for you. However, in order for you to get to that better thing, I need you to go through a growth spur. Growth spur? Growth spurts. Growth, I think it's called growth spur. I told you, I don't speak English. Anyway, so the point is that Allah wants you to grow, and He wants you to grow fast. Now, do you remember what growing pain felt like when you were a kid? I do, and it was so uncomfortable, and it actually really hurt. Like, I'm really surprised that literal growing of the body hurts. I'm just shocking. Anyway, but that's kind of the same thing, that sometimes while Allah wants you to go through that and get the lessons can be painful. They can be hurtful. They can be, sometimes kind of traumatic. They can, depending on the situation, so many things can happen in that experience, but it is meant to happen to us. It is up to us to decide how to deal with that situation, how to take on the lesson and the knowledge from that lesson so that we can go on and not come back to a situation like that. That is on us, but Allah will facilitate the arena, so to speak, where you're going to learn. And then it is up to you to decide how long it takes you to learn that lesson and go on from there and move on from that part, okay? So that can be a little bit painful, but it is not because Allah is trying to punish you. It is not because Allah is trying to be mean. It's not because Allah isn't looking after you. It is in fact because Allah is looking after you that sometimes He's like, I know you can do better. I know there's so much more in you than what you're showing, and you're worth so much more, and you're not allowing it. So I'm going to allow this to happen to you so that, well, I say to you, it's for you. I'm allowing this to happen for you so you can grow and come out stronger and bigger and better on the other side of it, okay? So when we're making dua and we're like, no, I really want this to succeed, I really want this to happen. And listen, I just used marriage as an example because I think that's one of the things where we're like, how do I know if this is the right person? You won't know. You can take a leap of faith, which very much, for me, the leap of faith very much rests in religion and religious thinking, because that is very much what religion is. You have to have faith and you kind of just leap into it. None of us have seen Allah with our own eyes, but we don't question that He's there. So it is again the same thing. We don't know what the outcome is, but we're taking that leap of faith because we're trusting that Allah is there on the other side of our decisions to help us and guide us. And if we fall, to help us get back up on our feet. Sometimes He will catch us, sometimes He will let us fall, but then He'll help us back up on our feet and then continue moving on. And that's the same thing that we have to do when we're trying to make decisions in this dunya, whether or not it's right or wrong for us. And so I want to remind you of something from the Quran. There's a few times in the Quran, you know how this goes. I can't sit here and give you the numbers of the surah and the ayah because I don't remember these things, but I remember the quotes. But you can probably look it up. There's so many of them everywhere in the Quran, where Allah says, that when something good befalls us, it is from Allah, and when something bad befalls us, it is from ourselves. So here's what my understanding of it, and in terms of us, are we making the right or wrong decisions in this dunya, where it really applies to us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even a wrong decision that we're making, and we're praying to Allah to make it happen for us because we don't know any better and we're only just using what we feel is the right thing for us. And so Allah facilitates something, okay? That is still good. Yes, even when Allah knows that it's not going to be the result of a beautiful, happy marriage or the success of a lifetime monetarily or whatever for you, this is still good because He's providing you with a lesson. And lessons are good because there is growth in lessons when we're not fighting back, right? So Allah facilitates the lesson. So He's like, okay, I'm going to give you something good here. I'm going to give it to you in form of a lesson so you can learn this and move on from it. Now, when Allah has served the lesson, we can do bad upon ourselves if we keep ignoring the lesson, if we keep fighting against it, if we keep ignoring the signs from Allah that says this is not for you. And these things happen also when we're in the middle of it, in the throes of, the lesson. Okay, so sometimes, if it's in a relationship, I'm going to stick with that example because I feel like a lot of you probably will appreciate it, is when you're in a relationship and the marriage turns out to be abusive, or the husband and you just do not get along and you just cannot, or maybe the person that you chose to be in a relationship with kind of just didn't exactly tell the truth about who they are or their ambition or something happened and it's just not for you anymore. I don't care what the situation is. The point is, it's not for you anymore. And Allah has shown that to you in one way or another. Now, you can say, thank you, Allah, for this lesson, so I'm going to move on. Or you can continue fighting it and saying, no, I'm married, so I have to stay in it, even though it is actually creating for you a much worse time being a servant to Allah. So if it's directly getting in the way of you serving Allah or having faith in Allah and tawakkul in Allah, okay? So you can stay in that situation and make that situation, which was a lesson, become worse for you, which I wouldn't recommend you do that. I'd recommend learn your lesson, move the Quran, okay? And that's what I would recommend. Sometimes that can take a little bit longer depending on the situation, and sometimes we can do that quick, okay? But it's not like there's a specific deadline on it, but we know when we're kind of overstayed our welcome, even in bad situations or less fortunate situations, okay? All right, so here's the thing about it, is when we're making a dua, We don't know what's going to come on the other side of it. All we can do is have faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have tawakkul, and always, always, always open up our du'as to Allah. Let go of our own expectation. Like, you can say all the things, be, specific in your du'a. I'd love it if he had blue hair. I don't know why you'd want him to have blue hair, but he can have blue hair, and I want him to have a beard that's like 5 inches long, and then I want this, that, and the other. And no, the beard being 5 inches long was not me trying to create an imagery of something else. Why is my mind going there? I was actually talking about the beard. That was it. But the point is, like, we can definitely be specific to Allah, and we should, because it gives Allah an idea of like how much we have an inside of ourselves, and that we're reflecting upon ourselves, which is also something that Allah says in the Quran. Do they not reflect upon themselves? So absolutely reflect upon yourselves. So, and that's a good thing for us as well, to understand what we're asking for and why, understanding our desires. But in that specificity and, sharing our expectations of the dua and the outcome to Allah, there has to be an element of surrender and tawakkul, saying this or something more. Ya Rab, give me this or something more, something better, not something more. You could also ask for more, but because they're saying something more and better. But the point is continuously opening the dua back up to Allah and saying, but I trust you ultimately as my leader, as my king, as my creator, and I will open it back up to you because you know what's best for me. So if what I'm asking for right now is not it, and you're like, we can adjust this a bit, say this or something better, or always open it up back to Allah so Allah's will can come in where ours falters, where Allah's foresight can come in where we have none, and direct us. And so here's the thing about that, is that Allah will then try to guide us and direct us and point us in a direction. And again, it is up to us to pick up on those cues. It is up to us to understand when we're being guided and directed, and stop playing that tug of war with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is very important that we then do not keep saying, oh, I feel like I'm being guided in another direction, and the doors that I wanted to go through are closing and other doors are opening, but I really don't want to go that way because I keep being stuck on my own expectation of these doors opening, so I'm going to keep knocking on these doors until Allah opens this door again. No, sis, stop, take a breath, tawakkul and surrender, and submit to Allah's will and go through the other doors, because you asked for a sign, you asked for him to guide you. And if your dua, Allah was like, you know what, I feel like you've already learnt this lesson, so I don't really want to send you through the lesson again. I want you to have the blessing, and you're allowing me to facilitate the blessing for you right now. You said your eyes are open, so I'm trying to guide you through that. Stop fighting it. Stop fighting it, okay? Because if you're stubborn enough, Allah will open those doors up for you again, and then you're going to go through another lesson. Okay? Allah facilitates. Don't forget that, okay? And Allah is willing to send us through those lessons because he loves us. So he wants the best for us. And the best for us is growth. It is not to stay stagnant. He wants growth from us. Constant evolving and growth in our journey in this dunya, and constantly coming back to him. So if he feels like, okay, well, you're not learning it, I'm going to tell you, you keep asking for this thing. I know it's not the right thing for you. This is not your forever, but you keep not learning the lesson. I will send you through it again so that you will call upon me again to get you out of the situation again. And then I will hope that eventually you will learn that lesson. Learn the lesson, sis. Come on, we're all rooting for you. I was rooting for you. I'm sorry, I got like that Tyra moment. We were all rooting for you. Oh, if you know, you know. If you're too young, you might not know this. I don't know if I'm giving up my age too much in this, but it is what it is. Okay, so yes, where was I? Yes, so if you want to make sure that you're, trying to the best of your ability to constantly go within the best of Allah's wills for you, and you feel like I've learned the lessons, I'm ready for the blessing, then continuously open up the dua back to Allah. Let go of your own expectations. The more we hold on to our expectation, which is the expectation is limit to the knowledge that we have of the world, the people around us, and ourselves. And let's be real, for the majority of us, that information is limited. It really is. Even when we think we know a lot, it is still so extremely limited. especially when we're comparing it to the Almighty's, perspective and understanding of everything around us. So everything that we think we're doing wrong, and if you're sort of worried about it, open up the dua, and then tawakkul, and then stop fighting it. If your expectations are not coming in, if you keep holding on to the expectation of certain things, the details, and it doesn't come, and you keep holding on, like, I need these details, Allah will send you those details, but it will be in a lesson. And so I would say, practice that tawakkul, practice surrendering to His will rather than your expectations, and follow the flow. But the beautiful thing about dua, really the beautiful thing about dua, and this is just as a little side note for you, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, but how do I know if it's right or wrong, if I'm making the dua, whatever, blah, 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 is that the dua is one of the elements of religion that requires full faith. Full faith. I say that so weird. Full faith. Full, I can't say it differently, I'm sorry. Full faith. Full faith. I can't say it. Anyway, the point is that it requires us to give all of our faith, I could say it that way, all of our faith to Allah. Because we're literally saying, I cannot do this on my own, and I need your divine intervention to guide me. And so there has to be an element of surrendering in that. And if you can't surrender, then there's no point in making that dua to begin with. Now, one thing I will also say before I let you go, because I do recognize I've spoken for so long already, is I do, oh my God, oh no, what is my brain doing? I'm so sorry, my brain farted literally as I was about to say the sentence, no, I get it again. Thank you for being patient with me. Sabr is an important thing as well. Okay, so what I will say though, even if you're concerned about whether or not you're making the right or the wrong dua, what I will say, my darling, especially to those of you who are writing me and saying, should I stop? Should I continue? Always, always continue making your dua. You can redirect your dua. You can open your dua. You can play around with the wordings on your dua. You can play with these things, rearrange some things in your dua, but you should never stop making a dua. There is no such thing as a wasted dua. There is no such thing as a wrong dua. Even if your intentions might not be 100% aligned with a good thing, it's still not a wrong dua, because you're still speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah will listen to us whether we're saying wrong things, right things, whether we're crying, we're happy, we are sad, we're angry. He will even sit and listen to us. And I say sit, but you know what I mean? He will listen to us even if we're angry with Him, and He will forgive us, and He will listen to us because He loves the sound of our voice. So there is no such thing as, should I stop making the dua? Never stop making the dua. But if you're questioning whether or not your dua feels like, I'm not sure Allah wants to give it to me, then start asking yourself, can I do something within the dua that'll open it up and make it so that it doesn't feel as restricted to one outcome or something to that effect? Okay? Now, I feel like I've said what I needed to say. This was a bit of a longer episode, but I hope that you appreciate this. I hope you had a nice long walk or commute to work or wherever you're listening in from. Which reminds me, if you haven't done so already, I would really appreciate it if you could leave me a review of this podcast. It does help new potential listeners who might be interested in listening to this podcast figure out whether or not it's for them. Also, which is one thing I haven't actually done, if you've already worked with me, if you've got my book, if you've read my book, if you've done any of my courses or worked one-on-one with me, or you're in my membership group, please do feel free to leave a review, a testimonial. If it's the book and you've bought it on Amazon, please leave a review over on Amazon. Again, it helps potential buyers read the reviews and figure out whether or not it's a book for them. And if you've worked with me in my membership or in my courses or my one-to-one, then feel free to send me a review or a testimonial of your time doing that work with me, so I can share it with other potential customers. Because again, while I feel like I'm decent enough at, exposure and getting my stuff out there, there is something about customers hearing from other customers, because of course I am 100% biased when I'm selling my services because I think what I'm doing is great, right? When I'm not having days where I'm like, oh no, you're an imposter, on the other days, because there are some of them, not as many as the imposter feeling days, but there are days where I'm like, yeah, no, I'm doing really, really good. There's still the bias because I'm the one selling the services. So if you have worked with me and you'd like to leave a testimonial, feel free to email me at zarapedderson@gmail.com or send it to me on Instagram at Manifesting Muslima. Anyway, my darling, that is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I really would love actually to hear your thoughts on this episode. So if you've made it all the way to here, please feel free as well to drop in over on my Instagram at Manifesting Muslima and let me know your thoughts on this episode. I really, really do appreciate so much when you reach out to me and tell me about your experiences with the content that I share. It makes me so happy, and it also gives me so many more ideas for content to come in the future, inshallah. Anyway, my darling, I will love you and leave you until next time. Please don't forget to live in love.